go Mommy's Cannon this weekend. But before we do that, I want to show you what $9 bought me in peppers. So as soon as I finished recording the video of my sale haul, I got everything organized and I washed all those peppers and I sat down and I sliced them and put them on cookie sheets and put them in the freezer overnight. That was the first thing I did. This is what $9 of sale peppers look like. Yes, my hands are clean, folks. Okay, so folks, each one of these bags, and these are like 1 gallon bags, each one of these bags was $2.99. Think about that. Let's get on to the onion. Here's all our trays ready for the onions. I just used them for peppers. I'm going to put them on the stove and take them one by one. Okay, before we get started, and yes, I'm using the chopper today, somebody told me that if you have a lighted candle near where you are chopping your onions, the burning of your eyes will be less. And with 30 pounds of onions to chop, I'm going to do my level best to do everything I can to lessen the issue. So one thing I learned really well when buying onions from the discount grocery, frozen onions, is that onions freeze really well. Now I'm going to just set this basket aside for the good parts of the onions because you know I'm going to be making vegetable broth soon. Into the broth basket. Into the broth basket. It may seem tedious, folks, but my vegetable broth is bar none. And they all seem to be the right size to fit my chopper. I'm going to do enough for one tray at a time. These smaller trays that I'm going to do first go into my fridge freezer. Perfect. Now, I'm going to put these in my fridge freezer and start on the next tray. Having the tray next to you and putting the peeled onions on it gives you an idea of how many you need per tray, no matter what the size is. Oh, this might be a bit much for this tray, but you know what? Once they come out of the freezer and I drop these, they will break apart. Okay. I gotta say, I'm halfway through the onions, and this is working. No more tears. Doesn't work right off the bat, but about three or 4 pounds in, it no longer bothers me. Okay, that's 30 pounds of onions, diced, trayed, and in the freezer. And these are my broth bags from the freezer. I'm going to start putting them all into one big one, because soon I'm going to be making vegetable broth. And these are going to go in the freezer as soon as my trays come out. So let's just set these aside and clean up and start on our carrots for dehydrating. This 10-pound bag of carrots, I'm going to put the onion bag in the freezer. This 10-pound bag was actually 2 bags. So I'm going to set this bag aside and we're going to wash. Oh my goodness, what a waste of plastic, but you know what? Their waste is my gain. I'm gonna save these bags. And these carrots are going over to the sink to be washed. Why? Because we're gonna be saving the peels and the ends for the broth bag. Okay, here's our 10 pounds of carrots. And I'm going to be dehydrating these. So I've washed them and put them in this dish pan. The chopped are going into here, and I have a stock pot on the stove heating up for blanching. And Our peels and tops are going to go back into the bag that the carrots themselves came in for broth. I'm using the smallest blade on my chopper for the simple reason is they will blanch quicker and dehydrate faster, and I'm on a roll. So, I wash all my produce before I save the peels and ends for broth. Cut off any bad parts. We'll be back when we're ready to put all these carrots through the chopper. Now, one thing I've noticed about this chopper, folks, carrots are really hard. You can actually break your blades and your chopper if you're not careful. What you do is you take a chunk that's rounded and you put the rounded edge, okay? The rounded edge to the back, give it that, and they cut better. They cut better if you're putting them this way than if you're putting them this way or even this way. Rounded edge towards the hinge. Okay, so here's our 10 pounds of diced carrots and our bag of peels and ends to go in the freezer for broth. Let's get this over to the stove and blanch them for dehydrating. Here's our stock pot, and it's only half full because this is going to fill it right up. Don't waste any of the ones you worked so hard to chop. Make sure you get them all in there. Once these come up to a boil, let them cook for about 1 minute. If they're bigger, cook them longer, but these are small. I'll see you out in the porch once these have come up to a boil and we've drained them. Okay, so we've got our towel on the freezer. Be careful it doesn't fall down and cover your vents like mine did. And we're just gonna start. These are gonna be so tiny that they'll fall right through. Some of them were falling right through right away. So let's put the least amount on your bottom tray. If you don't want to rotate your trays, I often rotate my trays, but put your thinnest amount on the bottom tray because it's the one that gets the heat the least. Okay, 10 pounds of carrots on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trays. I'm just gonna put one on top just to help the airflow better. And we're gonna set this on 135 degrees, and hopefully by tomorrow I'll be putting potatoes on it. Alrighty, now these are not of the 40-pound potatoes that I bought yesterday. Those are over here, and I'm gonna be canning them tomorrow. These are the 10-pound bag that Howie got for $5.99. But still, if you count this with the 4 bags of potatoes, 50 pounds of potatoes for $15.99 is not bad. We can distribute the extra cost of these with what we got on sale. And here is the last 5 wrinkly potatoes from my pantry. So these are going to be, we're going to peel and chop. Oh, we better get the right blade for this. I'm going to be using the same blade that I used for, ow, careful, those blades are sharp, that I used for the onions. Why? Because I'm going to be dehydrating these potatoes. So I'm going to do a bunch in little cubes because it makes them easier to dehydrate, and I'm going to do a bunch in slices. All right? I will not be saving potato peels for the broth bag. It's just dirt and starch. So new potatoes are beautiful, folks. Look at that. Now I'd be tempted to leave the skins on these. But these ones were obviously sprayed with the stuff to stop them from budding. These are new potatoes, and they're starting to get eyes. So these have not been sprayed, right? So we can leave the skins on if we like. I'm gonna peel them. Better safe than sorry. And they're more uniform in size, so they're easier to cut into the length you want for your chopper. Much nicer uniform pieces. And into the dish pan of water with lemon in it. Okay, here's our 11 pounds of potatoes diced and sitting in lemon water to be rinsed and blanched tomorrow morning for the dehydrator. All right, good morning everybody. I have no problem admitting that I blew my knee. I was up all night with knee pain last night. Our carrots are done, and my water is in the big stock pot, ready for the potatoes. Tell you, I need 2 or 3 of me at this time of year. And I may need to bring a bigger jar. I may put this into a half-gallon jar only because I will be doing more as soon as I get more carrots. Now, one thing about dehydrating is it's a real space saver, obviously. Push these down in, pick up all our little bits. Now I bet you never thought you could get 10 pounds of carrots in a 1-quart jar. All right, let's go work on the potatoes. Okay, here's our big stock pot with boiling water in it. It's about half full. And here is our rinsed potatoes, and we're just going to very carefully pour them in here. And we're going to bring this back up to a boil, and we're just going to put this lid on, and it won't take long for it to come back up to a boil. Okay, it took about 5 minutes for this to come back up to a simmer. And now that it has, I'm going to drain these and let them drip, and then we're going to start bagging up our onions. Okay, remember folks, don't let the towel fall down beside or behind your freezer. And we're just going to start putting our potatoes onto our dehydrator. These are now fork tender. They're not cooked, but they're fork tender, which means they're about halfway there. You notice some of these potatoes, the ones that were wrinkly, are white, and these other ones that Howie bought were golden. So I don't know, I'm pretty sure the ones I bought on Friday are white, but it don't matter. Potatoes are potatoes, right? They all go good in soup. Shake them down. These will have a tendency to lift your trays if they're not laid out good and flat. It don't matter if they're a little bit hot when you put them on. Why? Because there's going to be heat going on these to dry them. Right? And once again, we're going to put these on the fruit and vegetable setting of 135 degrees. On goes our lid. 135 degrees. Now let's go bag up our onions. Okay, so these 2 trays are not all our onions. And I didn't put this many onions on each tray. I just dumped, I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trays. And this is 4 of them. I just put them dump them onto the bigger trays to be handier, to be easier. Let's just start shoveling in. I've still got trays in the freezer, and I want to start shoveling these in to get them back in the freezer as quick as possible. It is still warm weather. I love having frozen onions. When I went to the discount clearance place and got all those bags of frozen onions, yes, I dehydrated a bunch. But I realized that having frozen onions where you can just dip a cup into and take what you need for supper is so much easier. So Somebody asked me, how are you going to store 30 pounds onions? Well, you're looking at it. You want to save money, folks, you got to be willing to work at it like this. Here are our 30 pounds of onions. And I'm going to say each one of these bags is approximately, I'm going to say 4.5 pounds because we did get rid of ends and skins. Now let's do the math. 3 equals, okay, $11.97. Each one of these bags of onions was $1.99. You can't get that in the store like that. I gotta get these out to the freezer. Now let's start on our potatoes for canning. Okay folks, be real careful how you grab these blades. As you can see by the blood on my apron, grabbing them the wrong way can be a problem because they're really, really sharp. All right, here we've got a dish pan of water. Our chopper is being put into play. I'm using, for the first time, my 2-inch blade because that's the size I like my potatoes to be in when I can them. So let's have a look at these potatoes. I don't think I'm going to peel these. From what I can see, this is the 40 pounds I bought. Yeah, these are beautiful potatoes, folks. I'm not going to bother peeling them. Cut it in half. Put it on the center and go just like that. And let's see. Perfect size for canning. And when I'm done cutting these, I'm going to put them in the dish pan to wash and get ready for canning. Get ready for blanching and canning. All the small ones. Remember, these are razor sharp, so please be careful. Okay, so in these 2 dish pans, I have approximately 25 pounds of potatoes. Now I'm going to wash my jars and get my blanching pot ready. This, doing them like this gets any dirt off. I'm leaving the skins on. These are really beautiful potatoes. There's no need to take the skins off of these. Now I apologize for the steam, but this is where a big stock pot comes in really handy. We're going to take our 25 pounds of potatoes. Oh, I may not get them all in here. Wow, that's close. That's really close. And we're going to bring these back up to a boil and we're going to cook them for 2 minutes. Now I know a lot of people raw pack their potatoes. And that's fine if you want to do that. But the only time I've ever had a problem with sludge and starch in my jars is when I did raw pack potatoes. I never have that problem when I blanch them. Now I have not brought this up to a boil, but it's almost at a simmer. I'm going to turn this off. I'm not going to boil them. They've been in here for like, I don't know, 10 minutes. So I'm going to take the topmost off because I don't want to try and lift this canner. And I'm putting them over into a dish pan of cold water. I got 2 dish pans of ice cold water here. And I'm dishing most of these into, and then I will put the rest through the strainer first. All right, now I feel comfortable. I'm going to take this over to the sink and strain the rest of these potatoes off and run them under cold water, and then we'll be back. Okay, folks, we're working with really tight quarters here today. So there's my canners on. There's my kettle. It's kind of smoking. Must be a piece of popcorn in there. My big old camp kettle on, getting hot. Here's our huge canning pot of potatoes. They're still warm, but they're not cooking hot. All right, when you have this large of a quantity, you want to cool them down somewhat, or by the time you get to the bottom of the pot, they'll be mashed. Here's our jars, all washed, rinsed, and ready to go. Our rings, our lids, but I'm going to go ahead and put the salt in the jars first, just so that I can declutter my counter a little bit better. Alrighty, our kettle is almost heated up enough. We've salted our jars, just so I don't have to sit here and do it every time. Fill the jar half full with hot water first. Then as you put the potatoes in, there'll be less debubbling needed. They will debubble themselves. Just be careful with the splashing of that hot water. Yeah, fill that jar half full. Takes you to 1 inch from the top. Just to be safe, run your debubbler around the outside. Always wipe your rims. And into the canner. Put your lids on, fingertip tight. And we'll be back when the canners are full. Well, it looks like I'm going to have at least another canner load. I have 7 1-liter or 1-quart jars in each canner. And the water was hot when that went in. The canners were on low, but now I've turned them up to high, and I'm going to put the lids on them. Okay, as soon as these bobbles are up, and these are spouting a steady stream of steam, we are going to vent our canner for 10 minutes. That means allow that to spout a steady stream for 10 minutes. Do not skip this step. This pushes the air out of the canner so that you get the proper pressure in the canner when you put the weight on. Our bobbles are up, and they've been spouting a steady stream of steam for 10 minutes. So we're going to put our 10-pound weights on. Please, folks, check your manufacturer's directions. If you live 1,000 feet or more above sea level, your pressure canning weights and measure and times may be different than mine. Another 10-pound weight on this canner. And as soon as we get our first vigorous jiggle, we're going to process these for 40 minutes. It's 35 minutes for pints, 40 minutes for quarts. Here's our first vigorous jiggle coming on to our big canner. And so I'm going to turn this canner down to between medium and maximum. And I'm going to set this timer for 40 minutes. Now my other one has not given me a first vigorous jiggle yet. So what I will do is when it does, I will set a timer on my phone. And there's our timer set for 40 minutes. So our timers have gone off. I had to set 2 different timers because this was a smaller canner on a smaller burner. And so they started hissing at different times. Now folks, please let your canners cool down naturally. Don't wriggle this. Don't take it off. Don't wrap it in wet towels. Don't immerse it in cold water. Letting the canners cool naturally until they are comfortable to handle is part of the canning process. If you were managed to open these too soon, A, you could get very badly burnt, and B, your jars could explode. You just got to let them cool down naturally. Here are my 14 jars of potatoes. The rest of the potatoes in the stock pot, I've decided I'm going to season and oven roast for the freezer. And then I still have 1 10-pound bag and 2/3 of a 10-pound bag, which I'm going to be dehydrating. Well, you'll see that in a little bit. Now, while I am going to can more of these potatoes, I did not get to the rest of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to because they're blanched, we're going to partially roast them, and then we're going to bag them for roast potatoes for the freezer. It doesn't look clean, but it is, folks. It's just stained. Tea towels in this house go through a lot of beatings. All right, so we're just going to open this bag. and dump these out onto this cookie sheet. See, they're already kind of oxidizing from not being canned and only being partially cooked. And I'm just going to kind of, you know, shake the water off them, soak it up in this tea towel. In this big bowl here. Take some, this is just 100% pure avocado oil. And I'm just going to spray this tray. You can use a pastry brush if you want. And now I'm going to dry these off with this tea towel to the best of my ability. Oil does not stick well if the surface is wet with water, but we'll do the best we can. So now what we're going to do is we're going to spray these with avocado oil, give it a drop of garlic, olive oil, and then we're going to sprinkle everything with some parsley, some garlic, some onion powder, whoops, some onion powder, some salt, and some pepper. There's my oven. It is preheated to 375 degrees, and I'm just going to toss these and mix all those spices and oils through the potatoes. I'm not doing it with this hand. I got a nick on my finger and this would hurt a lot. Okay, looks like we got lots of coverage on our potatoes, and right onto this cookie sheet. Spread them out as wide as you possibly can. And these are only going into the oven for about 20 minutes. Just long enough to, you know, cook the oil and some of the seasonings on, and then we're going to bag them up for the freezer. All right, so here are our potatoes. Now I am going to be dehydrating more potatoes. I'm just showing you the process that I'm going through with all of what I'm doing, okay? And these are beautiful. See how they're nice and hard little cubes? They're perfect. Now, I'm going to be dehydrating more, so I'm going to be putting these in the half-gallon jar. This is a good time to use your used lids. It's good for this kind of thing. Move that forward a little bit. We eat a lot of soups and stews in the wintertime, and having dehydrated vegetables is just the ticket. Pull a can of broth and a little bit of meat out of your pantry, or even just broth, throw it in a crock pot, add some onions, some dehydrated vegetables, carrots and potatoes, jar celery, frozen celery, whatever, and you got a nice big pot. I'm going to be filling this jar, I think. You got a nice big pot of winter comfort nutrition. Nutritious comfort food. Let's put it that way. All right. So this here was approximately 12 pounds of potatoes. 11 pounds of potatoes in a half-gallon jar. Okay, so I've taken these out of the oven. I put them in a 400-degree oven, and I roasted them for about 10 minutes. And then I took them out and I turned them like this. Don't try and do it in your oven if your tray is this full. And now I'm going to put them back in for another 10 minutes, and then I'm going to bring them out to cool and to bag up. Okay, so while we're waiting for our blanching water to warm up, heat up so I can can these potatoes, And while we're waiting for our oven roasted potatoes, we're going to do some more potatoes for dehydrating. What you see here is an apple peeler. I've never even used this one. Thank you, my love Doris, for sending this to me. But one thing I know about this peeler is it works on potatoes too. I'll do the bigger ones because they give you a better slice with, you know, because there's more potato left on the slice. Told you it wasn't just for apples. Put them in this bag for the compost. Slice, and into the water that goes. And I'll continue to do this until my blanching water's ready for my canning potatoes. Now, aren't these just lovely? They're not fully cooked, but they're cooked enough that when you make a meatloaf or something you're going to put in the oven, you can put a few of these on a cookie sheet, give the cookie sheet a spritz of oil, and by the time your meatloaf is done, your roasted potatoes will be done too. Isn't that amazing? Now I'm going to blanch these, just like I did the cubes, and put them on the dehydrator. These I'm going to do into potato wedges. I'll show you how I do that for the freezer. And these are going to be canned, blanched and canned. So when I have all these potatoes done, my video will be done and I will be very grateful. So when all this is done, I will show you everything I did with what I bought and how much it cost, because it's a lot cheaper to do this yourself. Yes, it's work, but at least you know, this is Canadian food and it's being processed by me. So, you know, I know whose hands have been on this and the cleanliness of the commitment. All right, so we'll be back when everything of this is done. Okay, while we're waiting for our blanching water to heat up for our canning potatoes, our slices are blanched and on the dehydrator. When I have all these done, my other ones should be cool and ready to be bagged. And these should be ready to go on a clean cookie sheet with different seasonings. What are you barking at? Any parts you see that aren't up to snuff, you just trim them off. You just go ahead and slice the slices yourself. Okay? You don't want them too big. Like the other ones I roasted were blanched. Okay? They were partially boiled. These ones are raw, so you don't want them too thick. I just got the camera in the head. All right. While our canning potatoes are blanching, we're going to put our roast potatoes away because they're now room temperature. Now remember, these are not, and nor will the wedgie potatoes, neither one of them will be fully cooked because you don't want to overcook them in the oven. But look at how lovely and browned they are. And these will be wonderful in a crock pot. I'm trying to make it so that I don't rip this tin foil so that I can just wash it and use it again. Approximately 5 pounds of potatoes into the freezer. And here's the last of our potatoes, a half-gallon jar full of our dehydrated potato slices. So out of the potatoes, we got 2 full half-gallon bags, if you put them in the same bags, of oven roasted wedges and oven roasted potato pieces. There's our 10 pounds of carrots. There is a half-gallon jar of potato pieces, cubes, and potato slices. And there is our 21 jars of potatoes. This is the Mrs. Wolfe from our half-acre homestead saying, you don't have to grow it in your garden to process it and stock it in your pantry. That's just good home economics, especially these days. Take care, God bless. Remember, folks, if you're a home canner and you're not trying 4 jars canning lids, you are missing out. These are heavier than any other disposable lid on the market. They are a US company, and if you order over $100, your shipping is free. Check in the description box below this video for a link to 4 jars canning lids and use the coupon code HALFACRE, all one word in capital letters, for 10% off. Check them out on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok for ideas and recipes. 4 jars canning lids, you can't go wrong.